Hello and welcome to Heart-repreneur TV. I am your co-host, Velma Gallant. Super excited to have you here today. We have a brilliant show for you today. Influence and change through the power of subconscious communication. This is going to be really interesting. Paul Ross is on a passionate mission to help entrepreneurs, salespeople, and business owners to skyrocket their success through the power of subconscious communication. He is an author, podcaster, online marketer, entrepreneur, speaker, and healer. Paul is madly in love with the power of language, turning pain into passion and stumbling blocks into stepping stones. Welcome to the call, Paul.
Thank you. It's my honor to be here. And as we begin our exploration together in this world of subconscious communication and its incredible power, I feel grateful to be sharing just a little bit of knowledge on how that can work for your audience.
I'm looking forward to this. I'm curious. I've been curious about brains for a very long time, even more so after I had my concussion about 5-6 years ago, because the healing required me to heal my actual brain and the subconscious communication. I want to hear how you define subconscious communication.
Sure. So first and foremost, I should inform your audience that among other things, I'm a hypnotist. And so we as hypnotists know that the vast majority of our beliefs, attitudes, programming is on the subconscious or unconscious level. And by that, I mean simply the part of the mind that we cannot consciously be aware of and or have control of. The conscious mind can process maybe 40 bits of information per second, but the unconscious mind is a vastly greater number. And one of the things I like to teach is in any conflict between the conscious and the unconscious mind is always going to win because it is the seat of what we believe. And as you know, what we believe is the foundation, not necessarily the guarantee, but the foundation of what we can create for ourselves. Obviously, we can have delusional beliefs. If we believe we're bulletproof and we step in front of a firing range, we're going to find out to our shock and dismay that our beliefs are inaccurate.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. I liked that. The unconscious is the seat of the beliefs. And I actually picture like a chair. It's what we sit on. We sit on our beliefs, and we believe they're as real as the chair that we sit on in the daytime.
Well, Velma, you'll notice that I use metaphors a lot. Metaphors are incredibly powerful because once you hear that metaphor, you cannot unsee the imagery it implants in your mind. Sometimes we'll talk about when I offer services to clients, I say, here's where you are. Here's where you would like to be. Obviously, there's a gap. If you were to pause and see me as the bridge across that gap, so you could enjoy that river of revenue that you deserve and desire, what would that look like for you? And so immediately I'm using two metaphors, the metaphor of a bridge and that river of revenue, and they cannot get that metaphor out of their mind. And the metaphor sticks deep in the unconscious mind. It gives the unconscious, the subconscious, I use the terms interchangeably, it doesn't matter, the same thing. Gives it permission to then open up new neural nets that'll match those beliefs. I believe, and science is beginning to show that language can actually affect our neural nets and grow new neural pathways, what they call neurogenesis. You had shared with me briefly about your own brain injury and how you had to deal with that. And I believe that they used to say that neuroplasticity was not possible. That was a holy writ, part of the canon, so to speak, of neuroscience. And then a scientist came along and she disproved that whole thing. So I believe that language can freeze our world or free it.
Ooh, I like that.
I've seen it with my clients, whether they're people who come to me for healing, whether they're top CEOs and salespeople who want to increase their performance without turning into obsessive compulsive people who are driven. I don't believe in being driven. I believe in being motivated and dedicated and devoted without being demanding or despairing.
I like that.
People caught in between the twin poles of being demanding. I demand success of myself. I demand the world give me success, and despairing. I'll never be able to make it happen. And many people rocket back and forth between those two, depending on the emotions or the events of the day. So my question is, how do you create a vision that's not dependent, that's in line with your values, and that's not dependent on your emotions in the moment or the events of the day, and yet at the same time is open to feedback from the external world? If you're not open to feedback from the external world, you can be completely off course and not get the data you need to readjust. So this is why I'm going to respectfully disagree with the people who appear in The Secret, because they don't make room for adjusting the course and they don't teach good decision making. I see very few people who teach how to make good decisions. Yes, they teach manifesting, they teach visualizing. I believe in all of that. That's inarguably and uncontrovertibly true, but it's incomplete. We also need to know how to making good decisions, which requires us to look at worst case scenarios, to do what I call a SWOT, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We have to look at all of those along with our visualizing and along with our motivation. If we don't, we're going to run into a wall.
Well, a lot of that stuff makes sense to me. So there was a couple of things that I picked out of what you shared there. I mean, going when I look at, you were talking about demanding and despairing, and going back to your idea of the seat of beliefs. Demanding and despairing sounds like a pretty prickly seat to sit on.
And people go back and forth between the two. They don't, and that creates confusion. Like, who am I? I can't tell which I am from day to day. Am I the person demanding? Am I the person despairing? And again, I said be devoted and be dedicated and be joyfully devoted, be joyfully dedicated.
Hmm. Well,
Because
and the other, go ahead.
one more thing, I believe we have to create our own joy in life. Happiness
Mm,
comes and goes, but joy is a choice that we can create. If we don't, then we're dependent on the circumstances of the day. This is why I
hmm
meditate. I meditate to find happiness independent of circumstances. And because life is so complex, meditation gives us the simplicity of breath and sound and body. And it's so simple. It's such a relief to us, we entrepreneurs who have to make so many decisions and deal with so much uncertainty. And so through that practice, I believe it's necessary to avoid going bonkers, to avoid burnout, bum out, or freak out.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. I like your SWOT as well. And so part of in my learning about brains and my fascination with brains and neurology and all of that kind of thing, if there is an understanding that we have cortisol and we have all of those things there for a very clear purpose, and that is so that we are prepared for those threats that may be out there. It's part of our wiring, and I think if we deactivate that wiring, then we can run into some difficulties. So I think your SWOT is super important, because we do need to be aware of those threats. And those same eyes that look for those threats are the same eyes that will see those opportunities,
Correct. So the
right?
question arises, Velma, how do we modulate our response to threats so it doesn't activate our amygdala, so we don't go into fight or flight? I
Hmm.
believe we don't want to turn it off, but we can modulate it so we see the data without going into the emotion.
Hmm.
And that
I
requires some detachment. So, how do we see the data without diving into the drama and the emotion? And that requires the practice of detachment, not disinterest, but detachment.
I
This is
like that.
this is part of my training in Buddhist philosophy and why I meditate.
I like that. And it kind of reminds me, okay, this is really going to show how old I am,
I'm the
but it
same. I'm the same.
but
We
not all of our
remember.
listeners are
We
that way.
remember. Look, we remember dial phones. We remember slinkies, right? We remember Rock'em Sock'em robots.
So do you remember the choke on a vehicle?
I never
When
used one, but I do remember.
so what that is, when you're talking about modulating, what that reminds me of, when my dad would go out and start the vehicle in the wintertime, he would I think he would pull the choke out so that it would run a little bit higher to warm the vehicle up. And then
Right,
he could push the choke back in when it was warmed up. And so that's kind of what that's reminding me of when you talk about modulating, is when we
right.
need to, we could pull the choke out, but when we need to, we can push it back in too.
Correct. It all comes under the skill set that I've learned in my own therapeutic journey called emotional regulation. Most
Mhm.
people are not taught the skill of regulating their emotions. They're taught to either indulge in them or to suppress them. And
Mhm.
many people in relationship, one of the things I look for is a woman who values emotional regulation and has a practice for doing it, because I don't like to deal with dysregulated people. I have my own challenges with it. And so if you haven't worked on that, it's a skill that's not taught. We don't teach making good decisions. We don't teach financial literacy. We don't teach emotional regulation. And we don't teach nonviolent communication. We don't teach how to
Mm.
hear the other person and express ourselves without making the other person go into reaction or victimhood or the rest of it. These are skill sets that are not taught. We're taught rote memorization and to be gullible. It's terrible what's going on. And so I believe to be someone who's devoted to a spiritual practice, you have to also develop these other skill sets, or you'll wander off into a cave with a guru and not be able to pay your bills and not have much of an impact on the outside world, which I think I'm speaking to someone who's heart centered and impact driven.
My why, my reality, my why that I do everything is to make a difference. I am here to be a contribution to the world in any number of ways that shows up throughout my life. So, you know,
Yes.
as I was going through motherhood, I was meant to be a contribution to my child and his friends. I have a lot of adopted children. I only had the one son, and I do believe that that occurred for the purpose that I get the opportunity to speak into the lives of these other young people that come into my life.
My
And
sister has the same. My sister Marion calls them her adopteds because they grew up in her household with her own sons and daughter, and so
yeah,
they're like my own nieces and nephews. I call them my heart nieces and nephews.
yep. They're the family we choose,
Yes.
right? So I totally get that. I love what you're talking about here with developing different skill sets of, the emotional regulation, making decisions. I've been, again, really taking time to consider about decisions and how they impact my brain. Decision fatigue. um,
Right. It's a real thing.
it really is. And the way that I support myself is with pre-programmed decisions, which is, I think, part of that skill set that you're talking about with respect to making decisions.
When I make a decision, let's unpack that. One of the things I say is, what assumptions am I making in this decision, and what data do I have to support it? The second thing I ask is, what work does making these assumptions allow me to avoid doing? The third question I ask is, if the assumptions I'm making are false, what is the potential cost? And the fourth one is, how can I find someone who's already achieved these results and gain their mentorship on which decisions I should make? And then finally, how do I build in early feedback to tell me whether I'm off course or not?
Mm-hmm.
And
That
so these are the
makes.
elements I think that we really need to look at, but no one teaches it because it's not sexy. It's not telling you that you're super powered and you're a god or goddess. Whenever I hear, oh, forgive me, whenever I hear anyone say, I am divine, we are all divine in one sense, but then you can say you're divine speaking from your ego, being self righteous, you're better than other people. I am a goddess, therefore I'm entitled to walk all over you and bring you my hysteria and emotional dysregulation, and you better value it
Mm-hmm.
because my hysteria is a gift to you. It's my femininity. And I think I'm just going to be controversial here because I am and say a lot of women view their dysregulation as a gift. And so they don't understand when men don't appreciate it. And men view their dysregulation as being masculinity instead of being a control freak.
Mm.
You are being
That
dysregulated is really a problem for all genders and preferences, I think.
I find that really interesting because I've been observing a lot of things over the last little while, and so one of the things that I do for my clients is we get to the heart of their internal motivation system. And that internal motivation system can have a light side and a dark side, or a mature side or an immature side. And so, what I'm hearing as you're sharing this is some of those, like the masculinity and femininity, we're going to have mature or immature, toxic,
Right.
not toxic, that kind of thing. And same
I
with emotional
I
regulation.
I saw something that was so brilliant that one of my friends on Facebook posted. It said, "Learn to listen to the sound of your intuition rather than the whispering of your traumas."
Mm.
And my learning is that life is inherently traumatic, either chronically or acutely or both. We all are suffering trauma and we all wear a mask that says, no, we don't have any trauma. But behind
Hmm.
that mask are people who carry wonders and they carry corresponding wounds. So we are a combination of wonders and wounds. Man, I just coined that right now on your show. You're inspiring me. We look at our wonders, but we also have to look at our wounds. Every
I
human
like that.
being is a combination of wonder and wounds. That's just how it is. That's the duality of life. That's one of the true dualities. Where do we
It,
carry our wonderfulness? Where do we carry our wounding? And there's nothing wrong with wounding. It's just part of our journey. It just is.
it's part of that tapestry of our lives. I mean, I know I've heard it before where, someone, I can't remember where I heard it from, but it was talking about the tapestry of our lives and the little tears and traumas that come with life. But when we stand back from it, we see a beautiful scene. And and if we stand back from it, we can actually look at it with wonder, right? And it reminds me too of when we look back at our childhood. One of my favorite memories of my son was when he was about 3 years, probably about 4 years old, and we were down in my hometown visiting family, and he saw a tent caterpillar for the very first time, and he got down into that catcher's pose that children do to look at it with that kind of wonder. And I remember craving that wonder, and trying to kind of like put myself in it and
We
experience
lose
it
it.
with him again. Yeah.
Well, for children, we human beings, one of the drivers of human behavior is novelty. And so, as human beings, when we don't have novelty, we shrivel. But for children, everything is novel. This is
Mm.
one of the reasons I think we can enjoy having children and having a loving bond with children because we get to experience novelty through their eyes. I, right now, am deeply in love with my ex girlfriend's little daughter who just turned, she's about a year and 3 months. I've never experienced love like this because I've never had infants in my life. I've had children, but with my nieces and nephews as infants, I avoided them because I didn't want to get crapped on and vomited on and peed on. But for some reason, this little baby, it's all gone past that. I'm madly totally in love with the kid, goofy and head over heels, goofy gaga in love with her. And
Mm-hmm.
she has a special relationship with me. Like she'll do things to me, I'll do, and she'll try to imitate the sound. And sometimes she's so clingy onto me. If mama wants her, she cries. If I leave the room to go to the bathroom, she'll chase after me and try and open the door and cry.
Awesome. I recognize some of that. I know when my niece was tiny, I picked her up. I love my hair. She threw up on my hair. I
Oh,
didn't pick her up until she was a year and a half after
this
that.
kid stood up on my couch and had diarrhea right through the diaper. And I said to my ex, Jade, clean up your baby's poop. She said, calm down, Paul. I'll handle it. Amazing conversation. I have to tell you, I'm a former pickup artist instructor. I used to teach guys how to pick up women, and I did it. I tricked them. I used what we call upaya in Buddhist tradition. Upaya means expedient means. When the teacher says, go rake the garden for 5 days, and the student is grumbling, but the student discovers that the point is not raking the garden. The point is to bring your full focus and attention on whatever the task is. So I would
Mm.
I would use upaya and sort of, I don't like the word trick, but get my students to think it was about picking up women, when in reality it was about developing themselves as a full-fledged, balanced, masculine human, and knowing how to communicate in a way and show up in a way that allowed women the space to feel heard and to be seen for who they are, which is very attractive and even a deep turn on. So guys can
Mhm.
get past the checklist stuff. They don't have money. They don't look are particularly handsome, et cetera, et cetera. And so it was a great means of enjoying myself, being a bit of the coyote. The coyote in Native peoples, First Nations mythology is the trickster.
Mhm.
The coyote comes along and plays tricks and games, and so I enjoyed doing that. It was lots of fun. So I came to this path through an odd way. We never know how the path will be shown to us.
No, it's so interesting. I agree with you 100% on that. I know for myself, I mean, I moved out when I was 16 years old. So when it came time, when I finished high school and it was time to think about, careers and stuff like that, I made a choice to go into secretarial because I wanted to be out there supporting myself fast. I had the intelligence to go to university, but I made a different choice. And I remember for years upon years regretting that choice, which I don't regret anymore, because as I look back, I see how each of these different things, pulling back from the tapestry, and I see the beauty and the wonder of how these things each fell into place to bring me to where I am today. That was a roundabout way of saying I recognize that.
I became a celebrity in that field. In fact, I can't unblur. Have you blurred my background, or did
No,
I do that?
that's you. You did that.
How do I unblur that for a second?
It's in your settings somewhere. I wonder if I can unblur you.
Virtual background,
Yeah, you're going to have to do that. I can't do that.
none.
There
All
you
right.
go.
You see over there that picture of Tom Cruise?
Hmm.
Tom Cruise played me or someone based on it, my pickup artist character. He played me in the movie Magnolia.
Awesome.
I
That's a
never
fun
got to
thing to
meet
write
him.
about.
I never got to meet him, and
Hmm.
uh, never got to meet the guy. But it was sure fun having that notoriety.
Absolutely. So we've actually talked a lot through this conversation about subconscious communication, because I'm kind of hearing that a lot of our subconscious communication is more, with self. Because when you were talking about teaching these gentlemen about how to pick up a lady, and you were actually teaching them how to connect to the truth and integrity of themselves, I'm hearing that that is a lot of that subconscious communication. Am I hearing correctly?
That's right. But I also taught them how to communicate subconsciously. May I give you an example? I don't want to make it a
Absolutely.
makeup artistry, but so
Well, sales is a little bit of that,
hey,
right?
the biggest sale you're ever going to make is a date. You have to do your prospecting. You have to make your initial outreach call. You have to establish rapport, ask the right questions to find out needs, wants, desires. You have to do your presentation of what you have to offer. You have to deal with objections, and then you have to close the deal, and maybe even get referrals.
Oh no.
So I would teach them to evoke the imagination, yeah, of a woman, evoke her imagination, emotions, like simple things like question. What's the difference between asking a question like, "What do you like to do for fun?" and asking this question: When you want to do something that makes you feel totally alive, get your heart beating hard, and time just seems to fly by. What do you love to do, or what's something you've always craved trying, but you never let dare yourself do? Now that
Mm,
evokes a different kind of answer. In order to answer that, you have to take a deep dive into your subconscious mind and access your fantasies, your desires, your unfulfilled wishes. It opens up a much deeper, much more exciting, potentially even erotic level of connection. So I taught them that's an example of subconscious communication, asking questions that elicit or evoke a subconscious and emotionally charged response.
okay. So what I heard is when you're talking about subconscious communication, it's actually it's more it questions for their imagination, or questions to open up their imagination, which is
Correct.
their subconscious.
Correct. Correct. That's
Okay.
one way to do it. I don't want to get into again, make it discussion about pickup artistry.
Well, no, but what I'm actually hearing there that I think is really important when it comes to our business owners is when you are talking to your target audience, your prospects, how can you evoke their imagination? How can you trigger their imagination and
Well,
start
I'll give you
asking those
let me
questions?
give you another example. So one of my rules in business and in persuading people in sales is that whatever you can get your prospect to imagine for themselves will be perceived by them as being their own idea. Therefore, they will not resist it. And one way to do that is to use implication and the power of suggestion. So let's say
Mhm.
I wanted you to feel rapport with me and I was about to do a marketing presentation. I wouldn't say, I would not say, so before I show you my marketing plan, I just want to ask you to please bring up any questions that might come up for you. That's because that's something I'm doing to you. I would say before we explore our marketing plan together, I just want to invite you to please share the questions that naturally arise when a great decision is being made. Now, I'm using certain words. We explore together, invite, invite, share. All of these words imply on the subconscious level that you already have a relationship. Does that make sense to you? We, that implies a relationship. Our, it's not mine, it's our. Together, right? I'm not saying at
Mhm.
this moment I'm going to use the power of suggestion to implant in your mind ideas that we are already in a relationship and you trust and even want to follow me as your leader. On the count of three, 1, 2, 3, I snap my fingers. But it has the same effect hypnotically because we are communicating in a way where the subconscious mind fills in the blanks. Now, there's another little sneaky little thing, and I don't think, by the way, there's anything wrong with being crafty and clever in the service of your client making a good decision. So we'll unpack that in a minute. But I also said a great decision is being made. That's deliberately vague. I didn't say a great decision to sign up with me today is being made. I said a great decision is being made. Now, I didn't say by whom or when or where or why or how. I left it deliberately vague. So again, the subconscious mind or unconscious mind has to activate and begin to process. What exactly does that mean? Their conscious mind isn't picking up on it. Now, this
Mhm.
all begs the question, Velma, is this ethical? Is this good? I believe it is, because to me, salesmanship is not just getting your ideas in your prospect's mind. It's about expanding their mind to include your ideas. And one of the biggest things that will get in the way of your prospect buying is they don't believe they deserve what you have to offer. They don't have that deservingness. So when you can break that limiting belief and expand that into their believing they really deserve something, when you can expand the possibility of what they visualize as being their future, you're actually doing something that's healing.
So I'm what I'm hearing here is kind of ties back to something that we talked about earlier about something being mature or immature, toxic, not toxic, light side, dark side. This type of communication, subconscious communication, is something that we would want to do from that mature perspective, in that we are coming from that place of how can I be a contribution. What I also heard in what you shared there was a language of and the picture I got while you were talking about it was of coming alongside them. So you we're looking at this proposal at the table, and rather than me sitting across from the table with you and the proposal being in the middle, I have now come alongside you and we are both looking at the proposal together.
There's that
Uh,
metaphor. That's
yeah.
exactly, you're using a metaphor. And once you, I can't, our audience cannot go back to not singing
Hmm. And I love metaphors. I play with them all the time.
that. And I know what he, as Groucho said, and I know what he meant her for.
Awesome. Well, we have actually, this time has flown by
No,
so fast.
no.
Yes, we are actually almost 2 minutes over.
Oh my,
So, Paul, I have so enjoyed this conversation, and I know our audience is going to receive so much value from the perspectives that you've shared. And I want to make sure that our listeners know how to find you. What is the best way to connect with you?
there are a couple of ways to do it. I have a 5-part series called Invisible Influence. They're little PDFs. They're about 3 minutes reading time, and each one gives you a tip that you can go out and use just to see immediate results. So if you want to learn how to influence on the subconscious level, influence
Hmm.
yourself, get rid of limiting beliefs. It's
Mm.
totally free. Text the word compel, COMPEL, to 411-321.
Okay,
If you're
I'm just
outside of the United States, then use WhatsApp and text the word compel. It's one L, dear. It's only
oh,
one.
geez. Let's edit that. Okay. See, now it's a good thing. Okay. How's that? Is that
That's
better?
good. And then if you're outside of the United States, use WhatsApp and text the word compel to 909-741-1321. That's area code 909, and then 741-1321. Make sure to put in your best email address, because that's how I'll deliver your goodies. Now, if
Okay.
you're a single lady and you live near the San Diego area and you think that I'm absolutely compelling, write to me, Paul at speakerpaulross.com, Paul at speakerpaulross.com. You never know where love is waiting to find you.
You're so funny. That is awesome. So there's another email there for y'all to connect to Paul. So this ends up living in Heart-repreneurs with Terry Levine, the Facebook group. You can see it across the bottom of the screen there. So those of you out there in YouTube land, come on over and hang out with us here at Heart-repreneurs. It's a bunch of amazing heart-centered people that you'll love to connect with. Paul hangs out here, I hang out here, and of course Terry Levine hangs out here. So come on over and join us. We'd love to have you. Paul,
We
thank
would.
you so much for your time.
I want to come back on, please, pretty please, with mega sugar, with maple syrup, and a side of Tim Horton donuts.
Right? And a good cup of coffee. Okay, brilliant. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a fantastic day.